Now, Selena Jones is not only a professional decluttering coach, but also a grief and trauma therapist. Most people who work with her are those that struggle with anxiety and overwhelm, as well as clutter. I will be putting the link to her wonderful newsletter in the chat if you would like to do that, or if you would like to join her Facebook group. And both of those things will be in the chat. And without further ado, welcome, Selena. How are you today? We were just talking about how we're both quite busy, and Selena might be doing a bit of method acting today in this
Yeah, I was saying to
session.
Jen, for those of you who don't know, method acting is like when you become all the things that you're studying. And today I was just like, I am exhausted on so many levels. Like I am physically exhausted and emotionally exhausted and psychologically exhausted. And I was like, clearly I'm just method acting. A friend of mine said to me, she's like, aren't you recording another episode for your podcast with your friend? I'm like, yeah, Jen and I have a recording this afternoon. She's like, oh, what's the topic? I'm like, ironically, it's fatigue. So I was trying to think of the easiest way to explain not just like basic fatigue when we're all feeling like, like a little bit tired, a little bit under the weather, but when we're hitting that level of fatigue that is all encompassing. Okay. I was trying to figure, how is the best way that I can describe that? And as I was looking up for some ideas online and I came across a really great line. And it says, so this is kind of like that really intense burnout area of fatigue. And it said, someone described it as it feels like a candle that ran out of wick. Okay, so that means it doesn't have what it needs to continue to provide light. That's a pretty powerful visual, right?
Really is.
Yeah, and I thought because when we start feeling really fatigued, whatever the reason is, and sometimes we don't even know the reason, our light is dim, right? We don't feel as present. It is hard to show up for the things that are asked of us. It's hard sometimes just to get through the day. There's a lot of symptoms that happen in our body, like brain fog, right? Sometimes it's hard to think a straight thought, to come up with words, to concentrate, and to focus. So fatigue is something that I think we have a tendency to really just kind of push off to the side. So, how many times do we say to ourselves, oh, I'm just tired? Oh, I'm just tired. Like it's not a big deal that, fatigue, tiredness isn't really something that I should be so concerned about. And so, I kind of want to address that today because I think there's sometimes when we really do need to pay attention to our fatigue and maybe try and find some underlying causes and also reach out for help if we don't quite know where it's coming from. Um, especially in the last couple of years, I've been trying to be really aware of not always trying to push through things. Okay, that's one of my personality traits. I'm just like, just got to push through it, just got to get through the hard thing, just need to keep raising the bar for myself. And that doesn't always serve me. And it doesn't always serve the people around me. So I want to address some of the concerns that I have. And one of the ways that I want to address this is I want to talk about caregiver burnout because I think that it also applies to fatigue that can happen in so many different areas of our life. So symptoms of caregiver burnout. Now, this can be if you are helping take care of a neighbor, a spouse, if you're raising children, if I know lots of senior adults that sometimes have special needs children, adult children, even if you're helping with caretaking with grandchildren. Okay. The grands are amazing little human beings. They also are pint-sized little energy balls, right? And there can come times when it's a little bit more difficult for us to be in a caregiving role. So caregiving is kind of like a really large umbrella. But a symptom of caregiver burnout are things like emotional and physical exhaustion, right? That can happen for a lot of reasons. Withdrawal from friends and family and loved ones when you are just too tired to show up to other places because, again, you're that candle, you're lacking that wick, right? You just don't have anything in you to to provide to other people. And I think we can also get caregiver burnout just, taking care of ourselves. I think that's something that we sometimes forget to consider, especially if we've had a rough go of it and we've got several health issues going on, and maybe financially things are a struggle, or things are changing in our relationships, in our families, with our spouses. There's all these different reasons that can cause that. If you have a loss of interest in activities that you used to really enjoy, right? A loss of joy is something to pay attention to, right? It's not something to sweep under the proverbial rug. And what about feeling hopeless and helpless, right? If your brain is spinning thoughts that just keep saying, like, this is never going to get better, it's always something, it's kind of like taking a shovel and digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it's harder to climb out. You're going to notice I'm someone that likes to use visuals. So now we have the candle and the wick, and now we have the hole and the shovel and the lack of a ladder, right? This is because this is how my brain works. I'm like, if I try to see it, what state I'm in, sometimes I picture things. Like, am I down deep in a hole and nobody knows I'm down there and I'm at the bottom of the well, and like Lassie's nowhere to be found, so Timmy can't save me? Like, I like to sort of visualize it because then it gives me a jumping off point. Do you have changes in appetite and weight, right? um, Changes in your sleep patterns, and do you struggle to concentrate? And some of these things happen as we age, but we kind of need to figure out what's our baseline, and is this getting better or worse compared to that? Getting sick more often. I don't know about you guys, but when fatigue hits me for too long and too hard, which also increases my stress level, then I am more prone to getting sick. And if I'm getting sick more often, I'm getting more stressed about it. And I'm just digging myself in a hole because I get very frustrated. And then the messaging that my brain gives out isn't really serving me. And then irritability, frustration, or anger towards others that probably isn't warranted, right? So sometimes short wick equals short fuse, right? Because that's kind of like our brain telling us, okay, you know what? There's too much going on right now. Like there's more that we feel like we can handle. Okay, so that's kind of like what burnout looks like. So let's talk about what burnout feels like. Okay. Um, Anxiety or fear. Okay, this can play out where, whether you are taking care of someone else or you're taking care of yourself, the fear that if you do something wrong, you'll either harm yourself or harm somebody else. And that can just be like, and I don't mean like intentionally harming people, but like, someone will, if you're caregiving for somebody else, they may have a fall. If you're caregiving for grandchildren and you're, beyond exhausted, and it's harder to keep an eye on them. And also, even for yourself, we tend as we age to have to take more medications. And it can be very easy for us to get confused about, did we take a pill? Did we not take a pill? Are we due for something? Are we not due for something? Did we take the wrong one? So that can fuel a lot of anxiety. And then we can also talk about the way that we feel with our anger or frustration. Okay. So, especially if you are trying to help somebody else and you feel like they're not accepting of your help, or they're denying that they need help, and you can see that they do, and you're trying to do your best, that can bring up a lot of big feelings as well. Um, and then also denying the severity of something. So, you know, in our burnouts, we can deny maybe what's going on with ourselves. Maybe we need a little bit more help with something, or we're taking care of a spouse and they are in denial. Or maybe we think, oh, I can handle it. I can take care of this person. It's not an issue. And we're denying that maybe we need an extra set of hands, or we need more support from our community. So those are things to think about. Um, and burnout can also feel like guilt. That if we take a step back and take a breath for ourselves and meet our own needs, then we start feeling guilty about it. or we think we have to make sure everybody else is okay and we're going to take care of everybody else before we take care of ourselves. And, that puts us in a really tricky position, because if you are someone that overgives, so you give and give and give to the point of complete exhaustion and you're not even meeting your own needs, that's not a healthy way of giving. Okay, that's not a healthy way of being helpful. So you absolutely need to be your own first priority. Okay, that's really important. Um, and sometimes burnout can feel like negativity. Okay, we touched on that briefly before. If your brain is telling you it's just never going to get better, why do I try? If your feelings towards your responsibility um, are like passive and you just feel like you're never going to be able to do it well, that's concerning too. And then, do you feel secluded or alone? Do you feel like there's nobody to help you, or there's nobody to help you help someone else? So I am a really big proponent of going out beyond our comfort zone to making connections in our community before we're desperate for them. I mean, if we've reached a point now that we're totally desperate for connection, absolutely jump on it, go out there and find it. Okay. And I will give you some ideas on what that looks like. But sometimes too, it can be so beneficial to make connections within our community long before we need them, because then we know that they're there. Um, One of the other things, especially if you're caregiving for someone else, and that's where a lot of that fatigue is coming through, is there's something called role confusion. Okay. So if you are taking care of elderly parents, sometimes the role of being the caregiver, being the child, gets a little bit confusing for you and your parent. Okay. Because, it's like my mom says, it doesn't matter how old I am. I'm always going to be her daughter. I'm always going to be her kid. Right. And she's always going to be my mom. And so in our caregiving roles, it's so important that I allow her to have as much independence as humanly possible for where she's at. So, if it's a safety issue, then I may have to step in. But role confusion can be difficult, and especially too if you're caring for a spouse, because if you see that there's a need there, but you're always the one having to meet the need, and your spouse is in denial, I don't need help, it's not that bad, it's going to create friction in your relationship and your relatability. Okay, so that's something to think about as well. Um, and also varied expectations. So this is when we think my spouse, my loved one, my neighbor, my friend, they need help. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to be super helpful. And the whole thing's going to be positive. They're going to receive it well. I'm going to give well, and everybody's going to be happy. And the thing is that when it comes to caregiving, whether we're, like I said, whether we're taking care of someone else or ourselves, that can be really varied. There isn't sometimes a whole ton of positives. We find out it's harder. We find out that there's more roadblocks, right? All of these things come into play. Um, and also lack of control. It gets really, really hard if you feel like this situation is out of control, that nothing that I'm doing is benefiting me or it's not benefiting my loved one. And then the last one is too many responsibilities. Okay. And I think this is especially important too when it just comes to our own care. Are we spinning too many plates? Do we maybe need to go outside that comfort zone and ask for a bit of help? And I know that for some people that's harder than it is for other people. We don't want to feel like a burden, right? I am a firm believer, because I've seen this play out time and time again, especially with my therapy clients, that people that care about us genuinely want to help us. They just don't know what to do. So one of the things that I suggest over and over again, make a list of things that would make your life easier. Is it having more time to yourself so someone can go pick up your groceries? There's so many ways now on the internet where if you don't have your groceries delivered, you can put in your order, pick exactly what you want, pay for it, and someone else can go pick it up for you, right? Is it getting a little bit of help with cooking? Is it having someone come in maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, or someone just coming in just to do the deep cleaning so you can get some more time for yourself, so you can preserve some energy, right? Cleaning takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of physical energy. But the great thing is that when we are in a home that has had a good clean to it, emotionally, that builds up that store of energy as well. We feel really, really good, right? And you can even, if you're someone who's working on decluttering, especially in Ontario, there are teenagers in high school that are looking for volunteer hours. I say this all the time, make use of teens in your neighborhood, right? Have someone come in and hang out with you to work through the stuff if they have good boundaries, if you're feeling like you've got too much stuff in your space, because that takes energy as well. Not just the process of decluttering, but also living with the clutter, right? So these are some of the sort of the out of the box things um, that we don't think about. And when it comes to sort of, okay, Selena, you told me what it looks like, what it feels like. Can you tell me how to prevent it? Because burnout is not a magical island that we all want to go visit and stay there for a while. It's something that we would rather detour. And I think it's really important that we catch it early. Okay, burnout means there were signs and symptoms of fatigue and exhaustion that we were ignoring. Okay, we just kept pushing through it. We kept thinking it wasn't a big deal. And I think especially in a thriving older community, um, fatigue can be a sign of other things. It may not be as simple as, well, I didn't get enough sleep, right? There can be very real health challenges that we may have to rule out. So, especially if something that's so common in our communities, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, that is exhausting. That causes a deep level of fatigue. If you are fighting a cold or flu, that also can cause a deep level of fatigue. And we have this tendency to think, oh, it's just a cold. Oh, it's just a flu. But the thing is that as we age, it affects our body more deeply. And it's always worth, if you are concerned about potential health issues, that you go and see your doctor and you get some routine blood work done. Okay. Because there are things that are lesser known causes for fatigue in seniors. Hypercalcemia. So that's when you have too much calcium in your blood. Okay. That is something that can happen to seniors. It causes irritation, it causes fatigue, it causes exhaustion. We also have depression and emotional stress. Things that maybe used to not bother us as much are having a more profound effect. And it makes us feel tired on so many different levels, right? Anemia. This is a big one. Okay. If you are low on iron, if you are low on B12, your exhaustion can feel like it's hitting you 24/7, no matter what you do. And these are things that are easily rectified. All it takes is a blood test. And I know that for some of you who don't like needles, because I have dealt with clients who have put off a lot of health issues because they didn't want to get blood work done. And you know what? That fear and that anxiety about that is absolutely valid. There are ways to make it easier, though. Okay. You can go to your local drugstore and you can ask them for a numbing patch. Okay. It's a patch of lidocaine that goes on your skin. It freezes the area. And so you hardly feel a thing. Okay. That can make, because the thing is that in order for us to take good care of our brains and our bodies, if we have anxiety and resistance to things, it is okay to find ways to make it easier. Okay. And sometimes doctors are more than happy to provide a very, very low dose of an instant anti-anxiety med like Valium, just to calm you down. Have somebody else drive you, though, just to calm you down. Get in, get the tests, go home, get some answers. And then your health partner can work with you to rule anything in or out. Because the other part of this is that as we age, we tend to be on more medications. And so many of the medications that we take, the number one side effect is fatigue. Okay. But that doesn't mean that that's something that you have to live with. So if fatigue is affecting all these things in your life, you can ask your doctor, is there a different medication that I can take? Because this is the side effect that I'm having. Okay. It is okay to advocate for yourself for something different if what is going on right now is not working for you. It is always worth asking. Sometimes the answer may be, you know what? That's all we can offer you. And you'll be like, okay, well, how can we work through some of these side effects? Because they are affecting my day to day life. Also, thyroid problems and long term pain. If you have chronic pain, and this especially goes back to that arthritis piece, that is physically and emotionally exhausting. And anything that is emotionally exhausting is physically exhausting. Okay. Um, Helene, what is the name of the patch? You know what, Helene? I don't know, but if you go and talk to the pharmacist, go ask the pharmacist, do you have a numbing patch for my arm for me to get blood work done? They will be able to tell you what it's called. There is an actual name, because my son actually uses it, and but I don't remember the name of it. And then the one big thing I want you to keep an eye on is dehydration. So as we get older, our our ability to actually feel thirsty and to go get a drink of water, it actually decreases. So it is very, yes, that's the one, Jen. Thank you, Emla Patch. Um, it is very easy to become dehydrated and not realize it because we didn't feel thirsty. So I am a big fan of keeping a glass or bottle of water around me at all times and sipping throughout the day. So I really encourage you to drink, even if you don't feel thirsty. Water, that is. Drink water if you feel thirsty. Because that's going to benefit not just your body, but also your brain, right? Because the other thing too is that when we become dehydrated, we become fatigued, it is also very hard on us cognitively. Okay. It can be hard to form sentences. It can be hard to focus. It can be hard to concentrate.
I just want to just, I think we should
Yeah.
underline something brilliant that you said, which makes so much sense. Anything that is emotionally exhausting is physically exhausting. Like there's direct correlation there.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And I think, I think it goes back to we have a tendency to tell ourselves, oh, it's not a big deal. Like whatever it is that we're struggling, we kind of just downplay it. We tell ourselves, so and so has it worse, so it's just going to pass. And I think we need to keep an eye on how long has this feeling been going on, right?
Mhm.
Um, as this will not become a shock to any of you who know my other businesses, as a therapist, I say it is so great to get mental health support.
Mhm.
Okay. And especially if you're struggling with any kind of level of burnout, especially if you're taking care of other people and you're like, this is stressful and I feel like I don't have anybody to turn to. A social worker, a psychotherapist, a therapist, psychologist, they're all going to be in your corner. They're going to listen to you. Like that is a dedicated 50-minute period. I mean, yes, you have to pay for it, but you show up and you get their undivided attention, right? They just want to focus on you and your well being. And I think that's amazing.
Exactly.
Um, so let's talk since we talked about that kind of that emotional part, let's talk about emotional exhaustion. So that can show up when we feel like we have a lack of social support. So we don't have anyone to turn to during times of immense stress. Okay. So that again goes to how can we build our connections in our community. I am a big fan of senior centers. They have so many really great social groups. You can attend them in person, you can attend them online. You can find places that offer classes or get togethers for a common interest, right? Like we have something where I live where a bunch of anybody who does any fiber arts, cross stitching, knitting, crocheting, they all get together every Tuesday night at the local library. And they just gather a bunch of chairs and sit in a big circle. And for 2 hours, people just work on their projects and You can go there and you can interact and you can talk to everybody else, or you can just focus on your own thing, but still be in that circle of community, and you can just listen to everybody else sharing things about what's going on in their day. So social connections are so incredibly important for our mental health. Um, and it's especially important actually as a way to combat dementia. Okay, when we feel connected to our community, it actually boosts our brain health, and they have been proving that with science. So, yay, science. And I don't have all the particulars of that because that's not my forte, but I'm just like, yay, science, good brain health. Find your connections. And if you're someone that, if you're an introvert and you don't want to do it in person, there are so many things available to you online now. Um, Emotional exhaustion can also show up in our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors. So sometimes we call that poorly regulated thoughts. So if you are prone to always being able to see the negative like this and not the positive, your brain, um, that's what your brain is naturally looking for. Okay, so anyone that has worked with me in my decluttering circles, we talk about celebrating your wins. So the tiniest win, we take time to celebrate that because we are retraining our brain that small wins matter. Okay, that they're really, really important. And when we notice small wins, then our brain is being retrained to notice more positive things. Your brain will put a lot of energy into actively searching for what it is that you want it to find. It's never my glasses. I need to teach my brain to find my glasses, but I focus on the positive. That doesn't mean that I don't feel negative feelings. It doesn't because, well, there are no feelings that are negative feelings, but the hard stuff, we have to feel those things. We have to notice them. We have to name them. But it's one of those, another visual coming up. It's like taking a road trip. So, if you're going through awful weather and it's like hailing and there's a hurricane and then there's a snowstorm, I'm like, you may have to drive through it, but don't park your car there. Okay. Feel what you need to feel. And then you got to pull yourself out of that funk and start noticing the positives. And sometimes we actually have to write them down. Okay. So, like, can you name 5 things today that were good or that you're grateful for? I am a big proponent of gratitude. Okay. Gratitude reminds us of our big and small blessings. It teaches our brain to focus sometimes, to really zone in on the small things that can get lost in the course of a day that actually really do matter. Right. So if, when I was last week when I was working, my cat, who in all of his 12 and a half years has never wanted to sit on my lap while I was working, decided he absolutely had to sit on my lap. Now it was kind of hard to work because he actually is a very, very fat cat. So he was like a double hand hold on my lap. But, the fact that for whatever reason, he decided, no, I need to be on your lap. And so I am grandma to this cat. This is my son's cat. So Littlefoot, who's not so little, was like on my lap and he's purring up a storm. And I just started laughing because, he was just like, I'm the king of the castle. This is the best lap in the whole house. And it made no sense to me why he did it, but it brought me joy. And if we don't take time to notice little things like that, they will slide by during the day. And sometimes our brain will only focus on what the struggles were, ways that we feel like we failed ourselves or we failed other people. So, gratitude is a very, very powerful mindset exercise, and I highly, highly recommend it. Um, so emotional exhaustion can also show up in a caregiving role, and we discussed a lot of that. It can also be in relationship struggles, right? We love the people that we love, whether we live with them, married them, raised them, but those relationships can change and they can push and pull over decades, and changes can be hard, right? Aging can be hard. Watching people we love go through things that are painful or a struggle can also be hard. And that can absolutely be not just emotionally exhausting, but then again, physically exhausting. Okay. So sometimes, when we are really struggling with fatigue, we have to ask ourselves not just what's going on in my life that could, be an underlying reason for this, but what's going on in the lives of the people that I love? Because sometimes we don't realize how deeply that can affect us. Um, Lack of control. So this is an important one as we age, and I touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the hour. If we feel like we don't have control over our own life, if we feel like there's things that we used to be able to do for ourselves that we now struggle to do, that is emotionally exhausting. And that will also be physically exhausting because that brings up a lot of the big feelings that can bring up depression, frustration, anger, irritability, right? We like our independence. We like our routines and being able to do things for ourselves and doing them the way that we like to do them. And if something is interfering with that, whether it's another person, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a life circumstance, big emotions will come into play, right? And again, look to your community, look to your healthcare providers. Even if you have felt like every emotional stumbling block that you've ever been through your life, that you always figure it out, you're going to be okay, it's okay to change course and get a different level of support. Okay, that's actually a gift to you. That's a gift that you give yourself. Because if we are really used to being super, super independent to the point where we don't like to ask for help, what if asking for help actually made it easier for you? It doesn't have to always be the big struggle that it is. Sure, there's going to be things that we're going to be facing that are going to be super challenging and they may be difficult. But if there's even a fraction of that experience that can be easier, I want you to look for the help where you need it. And if you don't know where you need it, I really encourage you to talk to somebody that you trust who has your greater good in mind and say, here's where the struggle is. This is what I'm really, that isn't going well for me. What are some ideas that can maybe help support me or help support my situation? Um, we talked about living with chronic illness. We touched on that already. Grief after losing a loved one. That's a big, big one of emotional and physical exhaustion. And there's no timeline for it. Okay. I could do, and actually maybe at some point, Jen, we can do a call on grief because I've got a wealth of information in that. But I do want to say that something that's important to remember is one of the things that people have a tendency to know about is like, the stages of grief. This, I think it's the 5 stages or 7 stages, something like that, stages of grief. And that there's anger and denial and acceptance and whatnot. And so we kind of thanks, Jenny, 5 stages of grief. Apparently I'm just adding more. The Whoops, are you still there, Jen? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. We we think that those are the stages that we go through, and we go through them in order. So when that study was done, that was actually meant for the person who had something going on in their life, and the end result was they knew that they were going to die from it. So that actually wasn't the survivors. Okay, so our trajectory and our grief journey is very, very different. That is also something that you do not have to go through by yourself. Okay, there's lots of community supports out there. Your health practitioner will have supports. The mental health community will have supports as well. And then I think the last one is just being careful that you're not overextending yourself, whether you're still working, whether you're working part-time, full-time, whether you're volunteering, whether you're helping take care of grandchildren. Okay. You are allowed to have time that is just for you and not just kind of like at the tail end of the day. Like, I mean, really solid blocks of time that are for you to pursue whatever it is that you need to fill your bucket. I think that's super important. And then we're going to get to questions soon. I just wanted to give you a couple of ideas to sort of help. I don't want to use the word combat fatigue, but just sort of to help balance things is taking care of our physical health and our mental health are two very, very big important things that come into play. So we want to make sure that we're getting good restorative sleep. Um, if that is not happening, talk to your health practitioner. Okay. Sometimes we go through many decades of life having absolutely no idea that we could potentially have a sleep disorder. Okay. That is easily figured out by referral to a sleep clinic, and they can do all of their nifty little sciencey things for a night and get you some results, rule things in or out, and potentially increase the quality of sleep that you have. Sleep is a foundational. It's a foundational for our mental health. It's a foundational for our physical health as well, because healing happens in sleep. Okay, healing for our body, healing for our brain. Um, if you can get about 30 minutes of exercise in every day, that can be walking, that can be swimming. Anybody who has heard me talk before, you know, I love aquafits. Get yourself in the pool. There's all the different ways that we can move our body. We can do yoga, we can do stretching. There are accommodated exercises that you can do on chairs, which is amazing. Just try and move your body. Um, and routine is really good. If you can wake up and go to bed around the same time every day, that benefits your body, because then your body knows what is being asked of it at certain times of the day. And that doesn't mean that what works well for you, it may not be the norm. Maybe you're a night owl. Like maybe your mojo starts running about 9 p.m. and you go to bed at 2 a.m. and you get up at 11 a.m. If that works for you in your life, that's totally fine. What I want to see is that you get good restorative sleep and you're kind of not like all over the place, that your body knows what to expect. And then we talked about hydration, and also feed yourself well. Okay. Food is fuel. So, you know, they say 3 meals a day, but sometimes breaking it down into 6 smaller meals a day really serves our body well. Okay. So I've thrown so much information at you guys today.
Oh, it's been
Thank you for
awesome.
hanging in there.
Yes, Selena, let's talk about the fact that a lot of us are women. Most of us, I guess,
Mhm.
on this call are women, and a lot of us, we're sort of society has sort of made us into people pleasers, or
Yes.
used us to be. So we don't actually. It's really hard for us to put ourselves first. So
Mhm.
how can we retrain our brains? Because I mean, we all know that you can't help others if you don't help yourself first.
Yeah. Um, I think one of the first steps, and this is probably one of the most uncomfortable for the majority of women, is that do not make yourself available to all the people all the time. So you can put your cell phone on do not disturb. You don't have to pick up your house phone. You can have certain times of the day that are carved out just for you, right? And I think that we have to kind of do it in baby steps, because there is a lot of social conditioning that what makes you a better mother, wife, grandmother is if you just keep giving and giving and giving and giving, right? And sometimes we don't even notice how much fatigue that causes us, because we're just so used to doing it. And so, and you know what? It's still a work in practice for me. I've become much more intentional about it the last couple of years. And then today I was on the phone with my mom. So she has major surgery coming up in December. And originally I was hoping to go down for 3 weeks, but then her surgery date is conflicting with other big things. And we found out it actually, her recovery time may be a bit shorter than what we thought. So I was like, okay, well, I can put everything on hold, my work on hold and everything. I'll come down for, 12 days. And and it's interesting because even at the age that I'm at, I was getting emotional about it. And my first words, I said to her, am I giving you enough? And right after it came out of my mouth, I was like, Selena, what are you talking about? I'm like, I mean, my parents have very good boundaries. They were very appreciative that I was shutting down my office, that I was buying a plane ticket, that I was flying down, that I was going to stay overnight with my mom in the hospital and be there for post-op care. So, but the message that I was telling myself was, well, you're not giving enough. Well, you should be there for longer. Well, you said 3 weeks, and now you have to give 3 weeks. But this is when we thought this whole surgery is going to be bigger and uglier than what it is. So I had to really take a step back and have a conversation with myself. and say, you know, 3 weeks would have been really, really pushing it on my end for so many reasons, for not being available to my clients, for my physical and emotional well-being, because caregiving in a hospital and post-op care is a lot of work. And it didn't even occur to me to ask myself, Selena, how are you gonna walk through this? So I think we need to do it in baby steps. If I don't have clients between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, I'm either napping or stitching. Okay. Now you guys always know what I'm doing between 1 and 3 p.m. If I don't have
If
an
our do
appointment,
not
I'm either
disturb is
napping.
on, you know what is going
My
on.
do not disturb is on. Yeah. You know what? And so my phone is almost always on do not disturb, because I am a person who you know what, like you can reach out to me, and then when I'm able, I will reach out back to you. But I don't like, this is the one, I mean, I think modern technology has so many, like I love the fact that I can FaceTime my mom because she doesn't live close to me. Every Sunday night, I FaceTime my mom. That's amazing. But if someone calls me and they're like, well, I want you available now, I'm like, mm-mm. No, you know what? Reach out, leave a message, text me, and I will make time to get back to you. Absolutely. But I don't need to be available in that exact moment, because the world's going to keep on spinning. The sky isn't going to fall. Even if the people around you have some resistance to that, um, this is all about our own personal boundaries, right? We're allowed to have boundaries that kind of protect our own energy and protect our own interests. And we have to schedule those things in. If we have a health issue, we schedule an appointment with our doctor and we show up at that time, because we say to ourselves that their time is valuable. Okay, well, you know what? I can't just not show up on my doctor. But we don't give ourselves that same level of respect, right? We're just like, well, I'm not going to schedule with me, or I did, well, I'm not going to do that thing for me. I feel guilty. It'll take too much time. You know, maybe I should be doing this other thing, right? We don't give ourselves that same level of respect that we would like our doctor and our other areas of health. And if we start meeting our own needs, then we are benefiting our health. If we are staying connected to our community, if we are doing, whether it's creative pursuits, physical pursuits, things that challenge our brain a little bit, it actually decreases the amount of doctor visits that we have over the course of a year. So this
Hmm.
is a prescription, really.
Well, they say, the whole thing about how what a great thing it was to say in job interviews that you could multitask. But now they
Yeah.
talk about how actually bad it is for you. You are using
Yeah.
up all your brain. I think it's the sugar in your brain, the glycemic index or something like
Yeah.
that. And the
Mm-hmm.
more you switch tasks without finishing anything, the harder it is to get back to that task. And
Yeah.
it also depletes you in a much quicker um, way. So
Yeah. That's like,
yeah.
in like when we talk about decluttering, I'm always saying do 10 minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely declutter for longer than that. But the whole intentional reason of 10 minutes is to keep you micro focused.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not bouncing around. And people say, well, if I'm decluttering this thing and it belongs in another room, but then I take it to, then that room's not decluttered, and people start like bouncing around like ping pong balls. One is they don't see the fruits of their labor as quickly, but two, they're using so much more energy. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you have this thing that belongs in another space, go put it in that space, come back to what you're working on, right? Stay focused. And that can be very, very challenging. It's also, we're not aiming for perfection,
Mm-hmm.
right? I say all the time, B- work. We don't need to perfect our focus, perfect our concentration. But if we can improve it, again, that's another really good prescription for our body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, does anybody have any questions or about their specific fatigue that they wanted to bring up, or anything that you've helped has helped for you? We can also throw this to you guys. You can put it in the chat, or you can also wave madly in the Zoom window, and we can unmute you. It's really up to you. I think it's interesting, Selena, that so we've done this is our third one,
Yeah.
our third wiser mind. And all of these things, they're all connected. So our last episode was on social connections,
Yep.
and oh no, sorry, it was family dynamics. I'm sorry.
That was
But
the last one. Yeah.
but it was talking about somebody that was feeling very overwhelmed because they were caretaking, and
Hmm.
they had their daughter and the granddaughters were living there, and she just felt completely overwhelmed, which
Yep.
exhausting.
Yep.
We are just on Spotify right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to get onto other platforms, Laura, but thanks for asking.
We're working on it.
We're
I'll let
working.
you know when it goes live, Laura. I know Laura.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and we will put that. We'll put that out on all of our channels for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. We just started with Spotify because it's the biggest and people can access it without having to download anything or having to pay for anything. So that's how we started with that.
But if you didn't hear those other two calls, it is worth a listen.
Mhm.
We had some really dynamic, dig deep conversations. As Jen said, the last one was on family dynamics, and then the first one was on social connections. And so I had actually just, when we did the social connections call, I had just been chiming, just sort of listening in on a conversation, like a educational piece with McMaster University on how to prevent dementia, and social connections has a really big piece in that. So it's worth listening to.
Yep. And social connections can be just as simple as going to the store and talking to people. It can be
Yeah.
coming on an art your service session and going on a hike with us or doing some yoga, all of
Yep.
those things. It's just connecting with other people, and it sort of helps get out of your own head as well.
Yeah. You know what? Even if
Really,
when you go through the checkout line at the grocery store and someone says, "How are you?" That just the like 30-second little connection, it has positive sparks in your brain. And I'm sure the science term is not positive sparks, but again, that's the way I visualize it. It's all good stuff, right? So we need more of that.
yeah,
Anything that brings
it's
you
really
joy.
interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting because you go into the supermarkets now and they're pushing you towards the self-checkouts and all those
Mhm.
things. And so it's just there's a lot of decrease in like actual face-to-face seeing people just in your normal routine. So you really have to go out there and find it.
Yep. I am a big proponent of, if you see something that you like about someone when you're out in public, tell them. So like the other day I saw a woman who was wearing this gorgeous, gorgeous dress, bright colors. And so I complimented her on it. I was like, "You look amazing in that dress." And so whatever she was doing, she was stressed out about it, and I wasn't really paying attention to that. And she stopped and she went, "Pardon?" And I said, "Your dress looks amazing." And I think like rainbows shot out of her eyeballs, like her whole energy changed. I love that. I
It's
absolutely love
fantastic.
that, because these tiny little, I call them micro connections that we can have in our community. We need to find more reasons to engage. We need to find more reasons to laugh, right? Laughter is so healthy for us, like so healthy. It just releases all of these positive hormones in your body. And then, she just did the rest of her grocery shopping walking around like $1 million. Like she just was on cloud nine. I think it's amazing.
Mhm. And every time she puts on that dress, remember that compliment, and she
Right?
it's like instant feeling amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's such an unexpected act of kindness, that one,
it
Selena.
is. No, it really is. It really is. Yeah.
May
Is
I
that
say something?
yes, of course. Is that Del Rose?
Yes.
Hi.
I am so happy that I joined today. I've learned so much,
Great.
And is there any way that I could get a copy of this conversation?
Yes, Del Rose. It will be in. It's also going to be in the Art Your Service library, so you'll be able to watch
Oh,
that when you do.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
no problem.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
And for anybody else, Spotify, it'll be uploaded to Spotify at some point on our podcast, and you can listen to it then as well.
And we will work on those other platforms.
Yes,
That's
we're
good
getting
because
there. Just have
It's
patience,
I,
we're
I'd
getting there.
love,
it's like
yeah,
we're pretty excited to get to Spotify, and then we're like, I don't know what to do next, but we're working.
I'd really love to share this with a few friends of mine, and I think they would be very beneficial from this.
Well, it's fantastic. Great. Any other questions anybody has, or everybody else just look, are you all fatigued from from tired from hearing all of this?
Right? Rudy, are you tired of my voice? Are you
No,
tired?
the whole person.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some great takeaways, Selena. You went over a few of them. Hey, Florence, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to say quite a number of things that you have said. It's the way that I have lived my life, navigated. So it's really beneficial. I would urge others who are who have difficulty with reaching out to others or initiating doing things to try it. You're going to like it. And the routines with the bedtimes and me time and everything else. It really works, you know. So I just
Awesome.
wanted to say, yes, I'm on the right track.
Certainly are.
And I think
sorry.
she brought up a really good point about like bedtime routines and morning routines. I call those my bookend routines. So I have routines that I start my day with because it sets to kind of like the tone and the intention for the day. I am a morning person, so I get up before the sun. That does bring me joy. If you ask my sister, that does not bring her joy, so that may not be your thing. But I like to get up before the sun because I light candles, I make my tea, and I journal, and that's how I start my day. But ending my day, I am not a night owl. So if I can be in bed by 8 p.m., that is my happy time. And I read a book, I put on my salt lamp and I read a book until usually about 2 hours. So about 10 p.m. and then it's lights out. So my body knows, like, I love the fact that I'm starting off the day peaceful and then I'm ending it with me time. And so whatever happens in this in between time, hopefully between 1 and 3, I get my nap or my stitching in, but even if I don't, whatever happens in the middle of that day, I'm starting it with peacefulness and I'm ending it with self-care. Right. So those are kind of like the reason why I call them bookends is because it's insulating me and it's filling my own cup and it's taking care of my own needs to help combat whatever the chaos or unpredictability that happens in the middle.
Yeah, I love that. Yes,
Mhm.
make sure it's scheduled the you time in there.
Absolutely. And schedule it. Don't just say you're going to do it. Put it in your calendar, put it in your planner, put an alarm on your phone. That's the one thing that always, if my phone's on do not disturb, I do have alarms to remind me of when I need to switch activities. So that way I'm not clock watching all the time. My phone does my thinking for me in that regard.
Good one. Absolutely. So people are putting some stuff in the chat here. Carmen says, thank you for your generous comments. When I'm feeling exhausted, I get outside and walk in nature. I spend time in art galleries and the nature museum, and I always feel less stressed afterwards. And she likes Gentangles too. If you haven't tried Gentangles, come to one of our classes. It's very meditative. It's like a meditative doodle. Thanks, Carmen. And Barbara says, wonderful thoughts to include daily. Great. Hopefully we will. And then Erin says, thank you very much for this call. I'm returning from extended caregiving and decided to turn in. I'm burnt out. You have provided me with a way to label and address this. Perfect. I think as soon as you say that you are tired, then maybe your brain will listen to you, especially the you people pleasers out there. Please yourself first because you won't be able to help anybody else.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it's that whole, they always use that analogy of the oxygen mask if you're flying, right? Like you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can help other people. And it's just, if we want to be good caregivers, if we want to be good, grandparents or spouses or friends or neighbors or siblings or children, whatever, if we're actually meeting our own needs first, we show up to those roles as more of a whole person with more to give and better boundaries. So this is actually, again, it's a gift to you. That's what that really is. You meeting your own needs or you reaching out to your community and to other people to help you meet your needs is a gift.
And it just keeps on giving.
Yeah, so true.
Now, listen, if there's anything, topics that you guys want us to cover, please feel free to email myself or Selena, and we will put them on the radar for a future Wiser Mind discussion. We are, speaking of fatigue, Selena's going to be very busy in December, so we're going to skip December and we'll be back in January for another Wiser Minds. Thank you so much, Selena, for talking to us, talking through this. I think we've got some main takeaways here. Make sure you get enough iron and your B12s. You can get these tested. And if you don't like doing blood tests, get one of those things that numb you before.
Yes.
Remember, social connection, 30 minutes of exercise. You can do that with me every morning. You know it. And water, lots of water.
Mm-hmm. Always water.
Always water. When in doubt, have some more water. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much, Selena. Now
Thank
go
you.
get some rest. Go have a nap or stitch.
I think a nap's in order. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.